This is NTV. This is NTV. This is NTV.
Tonight, it is shock and grief in Nakaseke district after a family of 3 was found hacked to death this morning. Also tonight, 2 children have drowned in a stream at Gulu following heavy rains that flooded most parts of the northern district. And in our weekly topical feature, we take a look at domestic violence, and this time our focus is on abused men. Be sure to have your say on this in our NTV Weekend poll. Plus, of course, the latest in the African Cup of Nations qualifiers in our NTV Weekend Sport. Good evening, I'm Josephine Karunji. We'll begin with the headlines. Shock in Nakaseke district as a man, his wife and their 1-year-old child are found butchered in their house.
Heads of state from the Great Lakes region have signed an agreement that has taken them a step forward in their efforts of resolving the DRC crisis. I am Chris Ochamringa with more on that story.
Domestic violence brings untold suffering to families. Join me, Rachel Arinitwe, as we delve into what triggers this vice and how it can be dealt with.
Uganda Cranes this evening played the Chipolopolo of Zambia in the 2013 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Join me, Alfred Odong, for the results and what the fans expect in the return leg to be played in Kampala next month.
Once again, welcome to NTV Weekend Edition. Now, domestic violence has traditionally been understood as a crime perpetrated by domineering males against defenseless females. Research spanning over 40 years has, however, consistently found that men and women self-report perpetrating domestic violence at similar rates. Part of the reason that this problem is widely ignored lies in the notion that battered males are weak or unmanly. In tonight's NTV Weekend poll, we ask, why are men silent victims of domestic violence? I repeat, why are men silent victims of domestic violence? SMS your thoughts by typing NTV poll, leave a space followed by a brief comment and send them to 8778. Stay tuned. We shall sample some of your views during the bulletin and some more at the tail end of tonight's newscast. Now we start this bulletin on a sad note. A family of 3 was this morning found murdered at their home in Katale village, Nakaseke district. The bodies of 30-year-old Isaiah Nduga, his wife, 28-year-old Harriet Naku, lying in blood-soaked bedsheets. Police has kicked off investigations into this brutal act with a call for cooperation from residents, as Julia Senkandwa reports.
Police had to use a sniffer dog to trace the footmarks of the people who butchered to death a family of 3 last night in Katale village, Nakaseke district. But because of the time it had taken police to arrive at the scene, mourners had already tampered with the trace marks, making it hard for the police dog to make any headway. The assailants first drilled through the wall to get their way into the house to carry out their brutal act. All the three victims, Isaiah Nduga, his wife Harriet, and their little one-year-old son, had deep cuts on the neck. Residents say before he went to sleep, Nduga first complained about receiving strange calls threatening to deal with him.
He talked of having been receiving threatening calls. Their SIM cards were taken.
Though the people who killed this family are yet to be traced, some residents suspect Nakubura's former husband. Police, however, is calling for cooperation from the residents in attempts to get the killers.
Whoever has got information, useful information that can lead to the arrest of the criminals, better bring it up to the police.
The three bodies have been taken to Nakaseke Hospital for a post-mortem. Julius Senkandwa, NTV.
On yet another sad note, the recent flooding in Gulu yesterday afternoon reached a tragic climax after 2 children drowned at a flooded stream where they had gone for fishing with 6 others in Baogal Parish in Koro sub-county. Due to the depth of the water, 15-year-old Vincent Odokonyero and 14-year-old Sylvester Ochen were washed away as residents helplessly looked on from the riverbanks. Police has now called on the public to be vigilant as heavy rains continue to pound the northern district.
The 2 p.m. incident occurred after a group of 8 children reached a deep crater that had formed in a papyrus swamp near their homes and tried to test the depth of the water. However, as one of their colleagues narrates, Alfred Odokonyero slipped in a deeper portion of the water and tried to cling onto Ochen, who was near him. The remaining children broke free from them and dragged themselves to the river banks. The 2 were primary 5 pupils at Korabili and Otema public primary schools. Attempts by residents to locate their bodies were futile up to late last evening due to the depth of the waters and lack of equipment.
Earlier we tried a search, but it was impossible.
District leaders have urged the bereaved residents to remain calm. Koro LC5 Councillor Grace Akelo Uma says the increased floods have widened the river banks and attempts to construct a bridge in the area have failed as the district could not allocate any resources towards its construction.
We had a very small route whereby the community members could pass. Even the school-going children could use that very same route, passing going to school and others going to the market. But it has become a very, very big kind of a stream which we had never seen before. More or less I can call it a river.
Police has appealed to the public to be vigilant as more rains continue to pound the district.
And strongly we advise parents to guard against children, because in these situations children will be tempted to go and swim, to go and fish, and yet the water is flowing at a very high speed.
On Wednesday, many residents of Gulu town were also left homeless after their huts were destroyed by flood waters. Heavy rains have also washed away several acres of crops. Weather forecast recently warned of El Nino rains in the country this month. Moses Akena, NTV Weekend Edition.
The new U.S. ambassador to Uganda, Scott Elisi, says the public should take interest in the use of the social media, such as Facebook and Twitter, as a tool to broaden engagement and understanding between themselves and the U.S. mission in Kampala. Ambassador Elisi made the remarks at a reception to welcome him to his new post.
The new U.S. ambassador to Uganda, Scott Elisi, and his wife yesterday welcomed people at their residence in Kololo. The reception to welcome him and his wife attracted people from different shades. According to Elisi, diplomacy is ultimately building relationships, and in today's world, it is not just about relationships between governments, but also about relationships between people.
We will meet you, we will listen to you, and we will learn from you.
But to make that happen, Elisi believes the use of the social media like Facebook and Twitter is the way to go.
And if I am in fact going to be called a .com ambassador, as somebody has already called me, then this will be a .com embassy as well. And I encourage you to join the conversation on my Facebook page, on the embassy's page.
We used to say if you don't change, change will change you. The social media has come. You can't reverse it. You can't erect a wall to block it. the best way is to go in there and compete.
However, during the 2009 September riots, which rocked Kampala after the Kabaka was blocked from visiting Kayunga, security agents began warning the public against using the social media for rallying for protests, such as the walk to work. This is also at a time when some quarters credited the social media for upheavals in Libya and Egypt.
The solution is indeed addressing the issues, the demands of the day for the population. Because a responsible government is what the people want. A responsible government is what we protect as the military.
So far, over 1 million Ugandans have phones, but it is not clear how many use them to access the internet, at a time when the biggest percentage of Ugandans have no access to the internet and computers.
You are also continuing your journey here at home in building an inclusive democratic society and a prosperous nation. I'm proud that we are able to support your efforts in that regard.
Critics say that all these areas need critical attention. Ambassador Delacy is taking the mantle from his predecessor, Ambassador Jerry Lanier, who left the country nearly 3 months ago.
Before the former U.S. Ambassador Jerry Lanier left for his home country, he said that the U.S. government injects $400 million in the health sector in Uganda, but he did not have much to report to his bosses because Ugandans, who are the major stakeholders in this, did not receive any tangible returns. Also, in the area of economic growth and development, it had declined during his time due to poor management. And as to whether this state of affairs will change during Ambassador Scotty's time remains a waiting game. Still Biaruhanga, NTV Kololo.
Thank you, Sidio. We'll break off for a short while, but we return with more stories, and you can expect the invisible crime. More men silently suffering from domestic violence. And 46 rally cars scrutinized amid disagreements among motorsport officials. NTV Weekend Edition continues after this short break. Don't go away.
This is NTV.
No one feels the motherland like we do. So tune in every day at 6 p.m. and Fridays from 11 p.m. for the best in homegrown music. Only on NTV, the station that celebrates local music talent.
Back to NTV Weekend Edition. 9-hour NTV Weekend poll. Domestic violence has traditionally been understood as a crime perpetrated by domineering men against defenseless women. Research spanning over 40 years has, however, consistently found that men and women self-report perpetrating domestic violence at similar rates. Part of the reason that this problem is widely ignored lies in the notion that battered males are weak or unmanly. In tonight's NTV Weekend poll, we ask, why are men silent victims of domestic violence? I repeat, why are men silent victims of domestic violence? To have your say, text 8778 followed by your name and where you're texting from. Let's take a look at some of your responses so far. And we start with Dogerea Dennis, who says they are protecting the pride of men. Daimler Ruby says blame the police. Even if a woman beats the man, police assume men are always in the wrong, so they first arrest you and you explain yourself from the police station. Another response comes in from Hamza Kasita, who says keeping the pride and self-esteem. Surely how can the breadwinner report a domestic violence case. And Nelson Nayebaziwe says, by nature, a man is the leader and so the head of the family. For that, they feel ashamed to come out and mention their torture. Well, thank you so much for all of your responses. We will take a look at some more towards the end of tonight's newscast. Now, Ruharo Mission Hospital in Barara is grappling with limited space to admit patients due to the overwhelming number of patients with cerebral palsy malaria, which usually affects children. In a day, the hospital records over 20 cases, mainly of people from outreach areas where expectant mothers have no access to medical services. Speaking to NTV, the hospital director says cerebral palsy affects the brain and muscles, making it difficult for a person to move freely.
Located about 4 kilometers from Barara town, Ruharo Mission Hospital has run out of space to admit patients due to the overwhelming number of cerebral malaria cases. In a day, the hospital admits up to 20 patients, especially those coming from hard-to-reach areas.
Kasese, Chisoro, Kanungu, Kamwenge, where they don't have direct access to medical care, which means that whenever they are bitten by mosquitoes and they get malaria, they don't actually access treatment. When a mother has malaria that is not treated, it can be transmitted to the child when it's unborn. So that when the child is born, the child gets born with cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy is a result of severe malaria without proper treatment, thus affecting body muscles and the brain.
Their treatment needs a long time management. So we train the mothers what we do here as part of therapy, and they continue with that therapy at home.
First, to the mothers to change their attitude towards the children, to tell them to change their attitude, to show that this is a lifelong condition, you will have to live with it. But there are ways and means how you can help the child to be more independent, not totally dependent on the parents.
And to curb the problem, the missionary-founded hospital is now partnering with institutions like Standard Chartered Bank, the Century Bottling Company, among others, to sensitize the communities to adopt malaria preventive measures.
When people don't fall sick, then they have more disposable income, which they can use to engage in other income-generating activities.
The hospital is also grappling with other cases among children, which include clubfoot, post-injection paralysis, cleft lip, and spina bifida, among others.
Moving on, the UN Special Representative for Central Africa has met with heads of state from the Great Lakes region at a Kampala summit and appealed to them to find a lasting solution to the Eastern DRC crisis. Ambassador Abu Musa says the United Nations is deeply concerned about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Eastern DRC that has led to thousands of people being displaced in North Kivu province. Meanwhile, defense chiefs from 11 countries in the region will convene again in 2 weeks' time to discuss details of the troops that will police the Eastern Congo. So far, only Tanzania has expressed commitment to contribute troops, while the heads of state continue with deliberations in October this year.
If not definite solution to the humanitarian and security crisis.
This closed-door meeting that went on for about 11 hours just goes to show the complexities of hammering out the technical issues of pacifying Eastern DRC. Now, the heads of state came up with a number of recommendations, and we spoke to the Uganda's Foreign Affairs Minister, Okello Oryem, who told us some of the key issues that were raised.
On the neutral international force, the subcommittee of the Ministers of Defense be expanded to include the Ministers of Defense of all member states. The Committee of Ministers of Defense should immediately convene in Talia a meeting to consider the report of the subcommittee and further develop the concept of authorization of the neutral international force in order to deploy the forces within 3 months.
The commitments by the heads of state have been regarded as a good thing by many of the people we interacted with here. But what's left is to see the practical implementation of these pledges by the ministers of defense, the army commanders, and the other technocrats who are involved in seeing that Eastern DRC is pacified in the shortest time possible. Chris Ochamringa, NTV, Munyonyo, Kampala.
Thank you, Chris. Now, fairly more is reported about gender-based violence against women, yet men too suffer violence from women. For such a man, a sign of a black eye, it is assumed, was got through a fall or a fight with another man. Even when men do report domestic abuse and violence, most people are so surprised that the victims usually end up feeling like nobody believes them. In this week's topical feature, Rachel Arinitwe delves into the subject.
I was married for about for a period of about 1 year. Sincerely speaking, I got married when I was still young, because by then I happened to get a girlfriend when I was still in senior 6. This girl happened to conceive, and the only way was to get married with that girl, because she could no longer continue living with their parents.
On November 11th, 2009, Parliament passed the Domestic Violence Bill into law. The law provides for protection of victims of domestic violence and punishes the perpetrators. It is yet to be assented to by the President. Now, domestic violence is a type of abuse that involves injuring someone, usually a spouse or partner, but a parent or child or other family member could fall victim.
First of all, it depends on how you people met in the home. You know, in the old days, people used to look for husbands for you or wives for you. They would know which family they're coming from. They know that that family, there's no violence, that family is so good, something like that. But these days you meet on the streets and you just get married. You don't know whom you are getting married to.
This vice is a serious problem and is a common cause of injury. Poverty, extramarital affairs, and poor communication are some of the issues that spark off violence at home. Victims may suffer physical injuries such as bruises or broken bones. They may suffer emotionally from depression, anxiety, or social isolation. It is hard to know exactly how common domestic violence is, especially amongst the men, because people often don't report it. There is no typical victim. It happens among people of all ages, levels of income, and education.
Things were not all that good. Kuba, she used to quarrel, and by that time I was at campus, and I did not have enough money, and the little money I had was not enough to cater for the family.
That poor communication in the homes also cause a lot of violence, and of course poverty. If there's no money in the home, me I want food, and you're telling me you have no money, what do you think is going to happen? You know, that poverty thing is now bringing a lot of domestic violence. Most of the patients we get now, actually the man tells you it's because I don't have money, but my wife doesn't understand.
Domestic violence against men isn't always easy to identify, but it can be a serious threat. It takes on many forms, including emotional, sexual, and physical abuse, and threats of abuse.
Men are affected, but because they're men, they fear to come out and talk about it. They feel, I think, a bit ashamed. How can a man terrorize me like this? But they are there. The only bad thing, they don't come out talk about it like women, so they end up shifting and they go to other homes. Maybe they get married somewhere or something like that. But they are there and they are suffering silently.
The situation had become extremely bad. But this is the person who reached an extent of even slapping me in front of other people. And actually, that is the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. I didn't believe that at one time a wife would slap a man.
Domestic violence isn't just about bodily harm. If your partner calls you names, insults you or puts you down, prevents you from going to work or school, stops you from seeing other family members or friends, tries to control how you spend money, where you go or what you wear, acts jealous or possessive, or constantly accuses you of being unfaithful, among other things, you, my friend, are a victim. If you are being abused, you are not to blame. Remember, help is always available. The first step towards recovery is finding somebody to talk to about the abuse. Could be a friend, a relative, a family member, a healthcare provider, or even the police. Find help and find the much needed support you need to recover. Rachel Arinitwe, NTV.
Well, to get more into this very interesting subject, we joined in the studio live with Jen Nampija, a counsellor and also the Executive Director of Befriender Uganda. Jen, a warm welcome to NTV Weekend Edition.
Thank you.
Well, Jen, what usually kicks off domestic violence? especially towards people that you're supposed to feel a protective instinct towards? What makes you get to the point of abusing them?
The problem always starts with the poor communication. People do not want to accept who they are in the relationship, like they don't draw the borders right from the start. And when they try to kind of to get into each other's way of living their life, then they kind of feel like they're being pushed onto the wall, and they feel like, no, this is not what we agreed on from the start. But if they really try to discuss these issues from the start, this is what I expect of you, and this is what I don't like, this is what I like, then I think that would help a lot with that problem.
Okay. Yes. At your center, do you get men coming in with suicide tendencies, and in the long run you find out it is related to domestic violence, being abused by women?
A lot of times. It's not from the blue that someone will turn suicidal. It's always that they have an underlying causing factor, and in most cases it's always from their social environment, which always turns out to be their own homes or their own family members or their own spouses or their own intimate partners. Then because they can't contain it, they feel like, I can't handle this anymore. Why am I going through this? It's best I escape it. And they think they should escape it or try to get the other person to believe that what they're actually going through is not fair, is to show them, and then they end up either attempting suicide or ending up committing suicide, then they end up dying.
When you said what they're going through is not fair, what defines what is domestic abuse?
Domestic abuse can be physical. That's when it becomes violent. So it's called domestic violence because it's physical. But then sometimes it's emotional. Someone calling you names, they look at you and they think you're nothing. They undermine you. They think whatever you're providing is not enough. Like, they don't treat you in a fair way. They want to dominate you. They want to own you. They want to decide for you everything that you decide. Then you feel like that's not right. If it's religiously, you feel like they think if you're Muslim or you're Catholic, they feel that's terrible. Why do you have to believe in that? You can't take my children with you to go to such a church. Okay. Then that makes one partner in the whole relationship to feel like they're being pushed to the wall. They don't want to believe in that. They feel like they're being dominated. They don't have a say in the whole thing. So they feel they can't bear it. The only way out is explode it out.
Well, just to understand emotional violence, you spoke about words that can be used. If someone said you are a coward or you are a failure, does that fall under the category of abuse?
It does so. It does so. Especially if it's used, depending on the situation. There's sometimes when someone wants you to just feel like they're trying to give you the morale to do something, they're trying to boost you up. But then there are times when you're out of an argument and someone tells you, you're such a coward, you know. They're trying to get at you. They're trying to undermine you and make you feel like, yes, you're actually bad at it. And then when they do that, they're suppressing you, then it's hurting you at the end of it all. So depending on how you react to what they tell you and how you feel about it, it's all about the feelings. Then it's emotional. How do you feel about the whole comment that they're putting towards you?
Jen, why would a man stay in an abusive relationship?
Why would a man stay in an abusive relationship? That's interesting. They have stayed there. First of all, it's not like they have open places that they feel these are places for men. Each time they talk about domestic violence, they feel like it's protecting women. So the men feel like there is no place to go to, or no one will listen to them, because we all people tend to believe that men are the perpetrators of the whole problem. Whenever there is an abuse, it's always the man. What did he do to you? What happened? Did he do this? Did he beat you? It's always so weird for someone to ask you, did she beat you? Did she call you names?
So they stay because no one is going to believe them?
Yeah. Okay. In most cases.
Okay, so how do you deal with it? Evidently, men are not going to report all of these cases. How do you help such a man?
The beginning point is always to accept that you're having a problem, then immediately seek help. We always have the nearest point of reference back at home. We always have the witnesses as neighbors. We always have the LC people next door to us. Then from there, we have the police. That's why if in case of any case, they always ask you, did you report to the police?
Well, there's some cases that are very difficult to report to the police. How does a man go to the police and say, my wife called me a coward, I feel abused?
That could be a bit tricky, but then because it can't be just one instance that you feel like, oh, I'm being abused. It's always a couple of different events that are kind of accumulating to end into what you would feel like, no, now I cannot bear with this. This is too much. That's the time they get to you. Once in a while, you'd be annoyed. We could be here and then I feel like, oh, you're not fair, you know. But if it continues happening from time to time, you feel like I'm being abused. You feel uncomfortable about it. You begin to worry about it. You begin to worry about what they will say to you next. That's the time you feel like this is not fair. Either someone is watching, or maybe a child in their house is also watching, and they're also feeling concerned about what you're going through, or how mommy is treating daddy, or how uncle is treating auntie, you know. There's always a concern. Then you begin seeing these small groups in their home. You're like, what did they say to him? You know, those are all some of the things that are kind of coming up. That's the time to seek help.
Seek help from who? Abuse in terms of words is usually a private matter in the home. You're not going to go to a police station and say, my wife abused me and said this and this to me, unless you have physical evidence of you were beaten or something like that. Who do you go to for help when you're abused using words?
When you're abused using words, sometimes it's best that you sort it out at the family level. Kind of, because it's always because of a problem. Maybe your communication skills in the family are not kind of good enough. So try to involve the family members first, because you always have family. It's not like you come to this life by yourself. So try to involve the family, involve your social support, try to sort things out, because there's always evidence. Even if you don't have a physical evidence, there are people as witness. At least if you call for family members to participate, it kind of gives you a more support, social support to resolve your problem.
Well, emotionally it usually takes a toll on the person. And finally, what happens to a person who has suffered abuse for so long and they have not reported it?
Finally, if they have not reported the abuse, that's the time you hear of suicide or homicides. Because they have nowhere to go to, or they have not handled it, they end up killing themselves or killing the family. And you're like, why did they kill the entire family? Why did he have to kill and then kill himself? Why did she do this? You know, because they have been going through this pain for so long and they're tired of it. They take control of it once and for all. So they kill themselves.
Well, domestic violence definitely is something that everyone should pay attention to. Thank you, Jen, for taking the time to speak with us.
Oh, welcome.
I have been speaking to Jen Nampija, a counselor and also the Executive Director of Befriender Uganda. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with the latest in sport.
This is NTV.
We know that all music is beautiful, and that's why NTV brings you the catalogue. Every day at 2:15 p.m. with the classics on Monday, reggae on Tuesday, country on Wednesday, Africa on Thursday, and love ballads on Friday.
You're like a dream come true, just wanna be with you.
The beautiful sound of music only on NTV, your official music station.
Welcome to NTV Weekend Sport. Uganda Cranes fell to the Chipolopolo of Zambia by 1-0 in the first of the 2013 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers played in Dola this evening. Despite the loss, the Cranes fans who kept track of the game all through the 90 minutes are confident their team's home record will see them throughout the final to be played early next year.
Uganda Cranes this evening suffered a setback in their quest to return to the African Cup of Nations final as they lost the Chipolopolo of Zambia by 1-0 away in Ndola. Christopher Katongo scored Zambia's only goal in the first half before the Cranes returned to dominate the second half but failed to convert. The game ended 1-0 in favor of the Chipolopolo of Zambia, who will travel to play the second leg in Kampala early next month. Despite the loss, Uganda Cranes fans have maintained faith in their team and are confident the home record will see the side sail through to the final to be played in South Africa.
I would say that we can turn the result down when we come to Nambole. Our team has always been good on the home ground. and we can turn the result, whatever result.
Nambole has always been perfect. I can assure you we can score as many goals as we can when it comes to that return leg. I think we shall make it.
Uganda Cranes now need to beat the Zambians in Kampala by at least 2-0 to book a place in the final. Alfred Odong, NTV Sport.
The Under-12 National Baseball Championship continued today with 2 games played in Wakiso District as the national body makes efforts in popularizing the game in other parts of the country. Officials noted a promising future for the game as the youngsters showed development in skills as well as mastery of the rules. The competitions that have always been played in Kampala with a turn-up of 6 teams this time had only 3. St. Peter's managed to register an 8-3 run win over Chikaya in a game which had both teams failing to record runs in the first innings. Chikaya looked promising after picking the first run of the game in the second innings, but they lost concentration for their opponents to level the score shortly before taking the lead with the second and third run. St. Peter's scored 5 more before Chikaya got their consolation of the 2 for the game to end 8-3 for St. Peter's. The other game had Lugazi beating Chikaya by 19 against 7. The competitions continue next weekend. Now, 46 rally cars were checked today ahead of the Grand Masters Sprint at Lubiri tomorrow, with a pair of former national champions, Posiano Wakata and Shafiq Semuju, attracting a lot of expectations from the fans. Officials, however, clashed over the way the scrutinizing exercise was being conducted, as Alfred Odong reports.
The chase for the National Rally Championship will see top drivers taking part in the Grand Masters Sprint in Lubiri tomorrow. 46 cars were this afternoon scrutinized amid disagreement from officials over demands made by the experts. I will not allow any of you to tamper with my car tomorrow. I'm done with the scrutinizing process. Drivers will be up to get as many points as possible to better their chances of claiming the top accolade. With just Mangat being at the top of the table, Ronald Sebuguzi and Christakis Fitidis in second and third position, the event is expected to generate a lot of competition. 42 riders will grace the event as they equally hunt for points to enhance their chances of claiming national honors in their different categories. Alfred Odong, NTV Sport.
Well, that's all the sport we had for you today. Thank you for watching.
This is NTV.
We know that all music is beautiful.
He does not change. And those who strive with you shall perish. I pray that which who has been fighting you will look at you. Fear not! God doesn't like cowards. He wants believers.
Just walk. Pick up your leg. Pick up your legs. Pick up your legs.
He doesn't.
I'll roll up.
Back to NTV Weekend Edition. A quick reminder of tonight's NTV Weekend poll. We asked you, why are men silent victims of domestic violence? Some of your responses. We start with Alfred Odong in Kumi, who says men keep silent because they feel inferior. These men feel like the women are doing them a favor staying with them, so they continually stay silent. Jane Apio in Kampala says some men keep silent because they have children with these women and they do not want to leave the children fatherless, so they take the abuse and stay. Ivan Majanga says because little attention is given to them. For example, it is not common to find sensitization of men about domestic violence rights. And Maureen says low self-esteem. They just don't want to believe that they too can be vulnerable. Finally, Sylvester Olo says pride. Well, thank you so much for all of your responses. Let's take a quick look at tomorrow's projected weather.
NTV weather with
roofings.
This
It is as strong as an elephant.
This is NTV.
Well, that weather report concludes our Saturday bulletin. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you for your company tonight. From myself and the team behind the scenes, it's good night.
This is NTV. This is NTV. This is NTV.